afternoon. My name is Mrs. Elisa Lawrence, and my occupation before retirement was a registered midwife and nurse.
Please tell us about some of your experiences of racism when you came to this country.
I came to this country in 1954 to do my nursing training. I was accepted in the hospital within 3 weeks of my getting here and started my nursing immediately. I was fortunate enough to, having had my nurse training, that I was able to work in many different hospitals in Birmingham and abroad.
Okay.
I traveled to North Africa after marriage and was there for 5 years.
Okay. Tell us a bit more about your experiences when you were here in the UK, so in Birmingham and in the West Midlands.
Okay. When I arrived in Birmingham, because this was my very first time leaving home, I was fortunate enough to be assisted and cared for by my cousin, and he also took me to the various hospitals as I had asked to start nurse training. And so altogether I went to about 4 or 5 hospitals.
Okay.
And within 4 years or so, I met my husband. And even more fortunately, I traveled with him to North Africa, where I was able to get a job within 4 or 5 weeks of my getting there, and continued working for 5 years.
Okay. So that got you to that position, but tell us more about the experiences that you had whilst you were training and living in and around Birmingham and Wolverhampton. Did you come across any experiences of racism or anything that you found a bit odd?
Well, to be quite honest, this was my very first time leaving my home, leaving my country, and coming into a hospital where there was a minority amount of West Indians or nurses from other parts of the world. But because this was a hospital dealing with nursing and training nursing, I was surprised that there were no, that they were very little, I wasn't hassled. I was well treated. I wasn't hassled. I was well treated. And I was even more surprised to find that the patients themselves showed a tremendous amount of respect were very pleased to know that a West Indian nurse had come into the country to be trained as a nurse for the United Kingdom.
So this is 1954, 1955.
Yeah, 1954. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
And how did the patients find you as a young 19, 20-year-old Jamaican nurse?
First of all, let me say that the matron was extremely supportive, and she treated me like one of her daughters because there were so few of us. I was extremely well treated, well trained, and within no time at all, I had the continuous form of upgrading because of my performances.
Excellent, excellent. Did you find any segregation at all?
If there were segregation, I would say that they were said, but not directly to me. They were said, I can remember coming off a bus, and I could hear a sound as if, oh, who is this black woman or black lady? And because I didn't turn around to see who is calling, I carried on. I think the sound just went out of sight.
So they weren't, were they addressing you directly?
Directly, because there was no one else like me with at the time. It was one person traveling, and I could hear this. And there was even one of the patients who was an extremely fine gentleman, and because he claimed he hadn't seen a black nurse before, he was one of those who asked all the questions. But
what sort of questions?
The words that he used was, and where is this lady from? How long have you been in the country? And are you going to remain as a nurse? And I said to him, oh, certainly, this is why I'm here being trained.
How did he take that?
He took it very well because he was a patient and I was caring for him. And so he said it with great respect. And I was rather a little bit taken aback, but at the same time, I appreciated him because he told me he hasn't seen many black persons within the hospital. And this was up there in Barry, in Cardiff. Not Cardiff.
Was that in the one in Wolverhampton?
No,
in Birmingham.
Birmingham.
In Birmingham, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there's Selly Oak and...
before I went to Selly Oak.
Right,
right.
right.
I went to 3 hospitals before I went.
So how many other black nurses were there, particularly when you were training?
At the time, I came upon 3 of us. One was a male, and the other 2 were nurses, new nurses. And fortunately for me, one was from my own country.
Jamaica.
This was a rather young girl. He came from Jamaica as well. So we linked, we got on very well, we studied, and fortunately I proceeded from there with my nursing, with my nursing until I got married and went abroad. Unfortunately, I was given given an appointment at one of the American hospitals where I worked for 3.5 years.
And can you remember where that was?
In what was it called again? The hospital. When I went abroad with Daddy.
Yeah.
North Africa.
North Africa. Okay.
Yeah.
That I believe it's Libya.
In Libya.
In Libya.
Yes, in
Libya.
Libya.
It's Libya. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Excellent. And so your husband was in the RAF?
In the Royal Air Force. Yeah. I met him before I went to Libya, and he was in the Royal Air Force, and at the time he was sent to Libya, and I went with him to Libya, where I worked with the American hospital, and he worked with the Royal Air Force, and that was where life started.
In your opinion, how has racism changed in the UK over the years?
From my observation, I think the racism has developed to an extent where I feel that the normal person coming to the United Kingdom from other countries have actually shown fears in traveling alone or being there. For instance, they would probably find it difficult to go into what you call those places where they have a drink and that, to go into a pub. They would probably find it very difficult to go on their own into a pub, or even travel late at any time on their own, because there were a number of abuses that had taken place. I mean, I don't have to guess that because it has been going on. But fortunately, over the years, there was an organization formed, and what was that called again? Race Equality, known as the Development of Race Equality. Is this going to be in? Because it's important, I think, race equality, where they had a number of people who had got together from the organization, had decided that they would try and get the ordinary people who may have suggested that they were being racial.
You think they were being racially abused?
All right. People were being racially abused, okay. Or they were given names which appeared that they were being abused,
Mhm.
and they had even found it difficult to get out and about. And but at one point, they had started developing equality, so that the people arriving would know that they were respected, because actually members of the government were actually going to discuss and invite people from those other countries to travel to the United Kingdom. I remember many of them actually going to Barbados and all those countries, discussing and talking and encouraging people to come here to work.
Oh, okay. So I remember that happening. Did that make it easier for people when they arrived that things were going to be fine because they've had a member of government come overseas to meet them and bring them over? Did that make life easier for them, or has life become easier now?
They felt that it would have, there was to a certain extent that people felt more, what is the word now you would say, if they felt more respected. It made them feel a lot more respected because they were accepted within the country. They were given jobs, and they were then able to book and arrive, or to arrive into the United Kingdom and to find jobs, although it was still very difficult. But because a number of them were already qualified, they were accepted.
Were they accepted based on their merits, or were they or were they not accepted because of the colour of their skin?
Generally, they were accepted on their merits, but there was a time when this what is the word now, they're from other countries, and you would say they were not, and a certain amount of people is not, one has to be very careful that they may think it's a government, but there were a certain amount of people who were actually hassled, and not accepted within the country, although they had a profession and that they were prepared to work.
Right.
They were given jobs, and
So they had the qualifications, they had the right to work, they were invited
but
to
there was this section where they were not wanted. They were not wanted.
not wanted and not welcome.
And not welcomed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you think things have changed now? Do you think things have changed now for black people here in the UK regarding employment, regarding living in a community?
There is a mix. The mix means it's up and down, and it is seen. It is but not so much the word, but you know that it is there. It is seen. You know that it is there because there are more and more people reporting that they had been ill. What's the other word now? They have been
Discriminated? Would that be?
They have been discriminated against.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. I didn't want to put the words
No,
in your mouth, but
that's the word.
okay.
I know the words, but it's
Yeah.
finding it when I want to. You know that they have been discriminated against.
So there's more reports of racist activity because those people who have been those people who have faced racist attack are able to come forward and report these things.
Yes, they have been encouraged. They have been encouraged to report if they have been racially attacked. Everyone who has had who has had race equality, who have had knowledge of race equality, they need to be able to report and see that there are benefits, that there are changes, and that the people who have been affected can easily go and say, well, we are not happy with what is happening, and we're hoping that there will be changes.
In the current climate of racism and the instances that have happened, Black Lives Matter and movements like that, what are your hopes for your grandchildren?
I am hoping, and I'm hoping that the whole idea of racism will gradually disappear, and that children that are now growing up and being schooled will be made aware what racism is, how dangerous it is, and that there should be a way of there should be a way of this being very strongly approached, that within time, people, men, women, children, and whatever, will be able to see things in an entirely different perspective. How is that?
Thank you. Eliza Lawrence, thank you very much for your time.
Eliza Lawrence Merchant.
Thank you very much for your time.
Well, this is what I would have been so happy and more and happier if a lot of people, whatever race they may be, who are having children and growing children, having children in school, having children who are going towards the higher aspect of knowledge and training, that they are aware that this is no time for anything but realism in life and people. If that is not, that's maybe a little bit too tight, but they should be looking at things from an entirely different perspective, knowing that this is a time where everyone should be more alert and aware of what is happening, and to make sure that it does not prolong, is it? Prolong.
Thank you.
Can I get up? Oh, Duncan.